I can remember a time in my life when I was drowning in financial stress, and every time a bill came in the mail, my stomach literally would turn over. And I was praying to God for breakthrough, but I just didn't think God was seeing or listening to my financial struggles. But things changed when I found these three biblical principles that we're going to cover here today, which were the keys to me unlocking financial freedom. And so I'm going to share them with you in this video because these three things that God taught me completely transformed not just my bank account, but my entire relationship with money and stewardship. And I firmly believe that if you watch this video until the end, if you actually let these biblical truths sink deep into your heart, and if you ask the Lord right now, open your eyes to see money the way that He sees it, your life, particularly your financial life, will be transformed too. So I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's just dive right in. And so the first principle that I'm about to share with you is one that is by far the most foundational, but yet also probably the most misunderstood by Christians when it comes to building wealth. And the first thing that God taught me is stewardship over ownership. And I'm going to read Psalms 24:1 that says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it." And so this principle changed everything because that verse taught me that I don't own anything. Not my money, not my house, not even my business. It all belongs to God. And I'm simply managing what He entrusted me with. That shift from ownership to stewardship radically changed how I saw everything. I stopped hoarding. I stopped stressing. I started asking, God, how do you want me to manage what you've placed in my hands? And don't get me wrong, it was not an overnight transition, right? It took some time and I still struggle with it every day. But I just say, God's my CFO. God owns the money and He's asking me to actually be the CFO of His money, right? And so managers, that's what stewardship means. Steward is synonymous with manager. So we don't own it, God's does. And so not only have I struggled with this and grown in it too as well, but I remember one client, Jessica, a mom of three who felt ashamed for not doing more, quote unquote, with her finances. She felt overwhelmed, she was juggling debt, and just felt stuck. But once she embraced this principle and realized she wasn't failing God, she was just misaligned, everything changed. She stopped living in guilt and started managing her money with purpose. I always say manage your money for an audience of one, and that audience of one is God, right? And so within 6 months, she was tracking her spending, budgeting confidently, and saving for her kids' futures. And this principle didn't just give her financial tools, it gave her clarity, authority, and peace. It's why I always say most Christians don't need more money, they just need better management, aka better stewardship. That's why I named my program The Good Steward. And so, by the way, if you want help implementing biblical financial principles like this in your own life, you can click the first link in the description of this video to learn more about the Good Steward program, where we help Christians build wealth while honoring God without all of that outdated, fearful, and restrictive feelings finances usually brings on people, right? But let's get back on track here. After understanding that first principle, which is foundational and so important, we are not owners, we are managers. There's another biblical truth that most faith-based individuals completely overlook, when in reality, it's actually probably the secret that unlocks supernatural multiplication in our finances. And that second thing that completely changed everything was the principle of multiplication through alignment, right? Not multiplication on our own, not trying to do things without God, right? Not seeking God first, right? But instead, Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all of these things will be added to you. The amount of times that I quote this each day to my clients, my friends, particularly my wife, is drastic, but in a good way though. And I think it's just because it just points us back to what matters most, which is seeking God, and everything else will be taken care of and given to you. And so this principle is what took me from financial survival mode to multiplication, not because I worked harder, but because I aligned deeper. I got closer to God and truthfully actually heard from Him on what He wanted me to do with my life, particularly with my business and my finances. And when I started seeking God's kingdom first, literally asking Him how my financial decisions could reflect His priorities, He began to multiply things in my life that no budget could account for. Relationships, revenues, opportunities, and even energy. And it's because my heart got right. When you seek God, He aligns your heart with His. He aligns your desires with His, right? He grows your character, right? Which then means that you can now be trusted with more. And so one client, Brandon, he had a 6-figure income, but was literally living like he was broke. No savings, he had constant anxiety, I remember, and he was just total disconnect between his work and his faith. But when he aligned his financial habits with God's truth, building margin, budgeting wisely, asking how his business could serve God's purposes, he built a $25K emergency fund in just 9 months. He also launched a coaching business that's now doing $12,000 a month, and it's kingdom focused. Multiplication didn't come through hustle, it came through alignment. He sought God first, and then everything else happened. right? And that's what makes this principle so different from secular financial advice. The world says grind harder. God says seek me first and I'll take care of the rest. But let me be clear on something. Our motives matter. Like I always say, you're not fooling anybody. If you're just going to take this advice and go seek God in hopes that he multiplies for you, that's not it. That's called prosperity gospel, right? Like thinking that God owes you something, or you're going to put $1 into a vending machine and it's going to kick you out some Cheetos. Like that ain't it, right? Like you want to seek God first and foremost because you truthfully believe it's in your best interest. You truthfully believe it's in the best interest of your family, everybody around you, and you truthfully believe that Jesus Christ is who he said he was, right? And so seek God for those reasons. And if there's other things like multiplication in God's plan for your life, great. He'll open up those opportunities. And so now this third thing that we're going to go through, though, is I'm about to reveal is perhaps the most controversial principle, I would say, of all, but yet it's the one that creates the most dramatic results. And this third thing, and this one might challenge some people, so hang on real quick, is radical generosity unlocks supernatural provision, right? We're giving because God tells us to do that and we truthfully want to follow God, right? And so I'm going to read Proverbs 11:24. One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want. This was hard for me. I'm not going to lie. Generosity didn't make sense when I was behind on bills, or I felt like at least I was behind, financially. Giving felt reckless, but God doesn't operate by conventional wisdom. He operates by kingdom principles. Sometimes I always say, yeah, it may sound logical, but what's logical isn't always biblical, especially when it comes to giving and tithing. Radical generosity isn't about writing the biggest checks. It's about trusting God enough to release what he's given you, even when it doesn't feel safe. Because if it felt safe and it was comfortable, that wouldn't really be faith, right? When you're tithing or giving, it should stretch you. It should make you feel uncomfortable. Otherwise, you're probably not giving to the largest of your capacity or in a way that aligns with God and honors him. And every time I've obeyed in this area, I've seen provision flow in ways I couldn't have manufactured. And again, when I say obey, it means my motives were in the right place. And so let's talk about one of my clients, Julie. And she had tithed faithfully for years, but still felt stuck financially. But when she embraced radical generosity, giving above and beyond with faith, not fear, God opened up doors for her. Her business crossed 6 figures for the first time ever, and she paid off every dollar of debt before she turned 50 years old. And so this principle challenges a lot of religious mindsets. Please hear me on that. This is not about give to get. That is prosperity gospel. That's not what I'm teaching here. I'm doing my absolute best to teach as close to I possibly can to proper theology. It's about surrender, obedience, and faith, and God honors that with supernatural provision. Look in Malachi, the only time ever in the Bible God says to test him when it comes to tithing, when it comes to giving, right? And so it's literally the only time in that big old Bible that God says to test him. And so last time I'll say it for probably the third or fourth time, your motives matter. So these are the 3 things that God taught me that transformed my financial life from stress and scarcity to peace and abundance. Doesn't mean that I still don't struggle with stress and scarcity from time to time, but I know who to run to, what I do, and I know the truth when that happens to help me shift back. And so now I didn't share this to brag about what God has done in my life. I shared this because I know there are faithful Christians watching this who are tired of feeling guilty about wanting financial freedom, who are exhausted from living paycheck to paycheck, and who deep down know that God has called them to more. So the truth is, when we manage money according to biblical principles, when we understand that we're stewards, not owners, when we prioritize generosity and wise planning, and when we work into the Lord, abundance, or work on behalf of the Lord, abundance isn't just possible, it's definitely a part of God's design. And so if you want to learn my full faith-based money management system that's allowed me to become financially free and eliminate all debt, then click the video on the screen right now and go check that out. Thank you for watching. I'll see you over on the next video.